Welcome, everybody, to Modern Life Podcast. We're talking about Jojo Rabbit today, the movie that just came out. We're keeping it current.
Woo! Whoop!
What's his name? Taika Waititi.
Yep.
I did it. We're talking about Taika Waititi's Jojo Rabbit. It's amazing. We need to talk about it. So, without further ado, let's just dive right into it.
So, Jojo, I'm sure we can figure out something for you to do.
Oh.
Ideas?
Yeah.
Guys?
Yeah. Okay, well, we need somebody to walk the clones. Also, I think maybe he could hand out this new propaganda.
But as always, before we get going, we're going to do our little Modern Thoughts segment. Who wants to start today? I started last week.
I'll start. So I am just going to highlight an article that I read regarding this girl who is like 17 years old. She goes to school and she gets like her friends like come and basically like tell her that there's this new girl that started. She's like 3 years younger. They look like twins. Well, instantly they like met and like had this weird connection and they couldn't figure it out. And they like started like hanging out. And then they like eventually ended up taking a selfie because everybody takes selfies these days.
Let me take a selfie.
A selfie? And they ended up showing it to their parents. And like one of their parents like kind of started asking like a couple questions, like weird questions about it, but they didn't say anything. And like a week later.
Wait, about the selfie?
Yeah. They were like, oh, that girl does look really like, when was she born?
Okay.
Kind of thing. Come to find out that a week later that the younger girl's parents, or no, the 17-year-old's parents gets arrested and she gets brought to a Safeway house basically and told that her parents stole her at birth. And I guess my modern thought is just like,
Don't
see both sides.
Babies.
Yeah, no.
I don't see both sides.
No. I'm not saying I see both sides. She had a really hard time like connecting with the biological parents because, you know, she's 18 years with these other people that she thought were her parents, you know? And like, I guess the father never knew. The mother like pretended like had a miscarriage and then like pretended to carry on as pregnant. So the dad actually thought she had the child. So he had no idea.
How's that
supposedly.
possible?
I don't know. That's a little, but there's no proof. So he was never charged with anything. The mother was charged with like 10 years and she has still to this day has like no relationship with the biological parents because to her, they took her actual mother away and she has like a hard time grasping. I think it's interesting to like have that turmoil in your head of like loving somebody who raised you and like was your parent. And then like your biological parent, because I do have a biological mother and I'm not like, I have no connection to her at all, personal choice, but like I literally would not care if she dropped dead tomorrow. So I think that there is that in your head of like, I don't know. I just feel like it's an interesting story. I wanted to highlight it. You guys have any opinions?
No, I just can't.
It's insane.
I already said this, but I can't imagine like giving birth and then the nurse coming out and telling you, oh, your baby's gone. Your baby's been snatched up.
Yeah, I think that I read it from a different perspective, which is interesting because I'm a mother, so I should have read it from a perspective of being the biological parent. But I think it's written from her point of view. It's like it highlights like things I wouldn't think of. Yeah, no, that would be horrible. I would never get over it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, don't snatch babies.
That's horrible.
It's a horrible situation.
Horrible.
How'd you go on living after someone snatches your baby?
It's crazy. They ended up having like another kid like 3 years later.
I'm surprised that, I don't know. Like I wouldn't have been surprised if you like split up after having, it's like so traumatic.
Oh, they didn't stay together.
Oh, well, there you go.
But they did stay together long enough to have another kid like 3 years later. And then
they split?
I think bizarre. A couple years after that, yeah.
Oh, it's a hot mess. Hot mess.
That was terrible.
But the girl, the 18-year-old actually decided to like stay with the non-biological, like she ended up like moving in with the non-biological parent.
The one that snatched her.
The father that supposedly didn't know.
How would you not?
Was comfort.
How would you not know?
I don't know. Well, supposedly the mom like faked it, like continued to like dress as she was pregnant.
Yeah, but when do you go to the hospital to give birth? The father's not there to. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's weird, but
Is she working a lot? She's like, "Hey, I pumped out this baby last night. Like, here it is."
Yeah. No, it's a weird
Very
thing.
strange.
And I think it's strange that she like has no resentment to them, but they must have been really good parents in order for her to have no resentment. It's an interesting thought.
All right, I'm going next.
Ugh.
I read an article. It came out on the 3rd of October, about a month ago, by Marco Margaritov. It is about Herculaneum, which is the town that was right next to Mount Vesuvius, which broke out in 79 AD. I have written down.
Wow.
So they have all these scrolls from a pretty much intact library of antiquity, and they call it the Villa of Papyri. And these are all, I mean, not lava. It wasn't really a lot of lava, but like there's a lot of hot ash and coal and whatever happens when this Mount Vesuvius broke out.
Right.
So you can't just unravel these scrolls. They'll just fall apart as soon as the ink is exposed to the light and the air. You can't read them anymore. Mm-hmm. So they have these like charcoalized scrolls that they're trying to figure out what's written in there, because it's a really cool look into, you don't have a lot of scrolls left over. Like this is a really rare, cool find that they've just had sitting there because they don't know what to do with it.
You need like special technology to read them?
They just came up with
Leaf
something
blower.
called...
blow the ash.
That's right. Something called synchrotron, which is an X-ray machine that projects light brighter than the sun, which is just something I can say but can't really
that
imagine.
possible?
Yeah.
Wait, an X... Okay, so it's X... Well, it's X-rays that are brighter than the sun,
Yes,
right?
X-ray technology. But then you have to program and train the computer to recognize ink from charcoal and recognize the text and what's written there. And once they have all that figured out, they can then apply all that technology to all these other scrolls that are too old to unravel. And they will then have access to all this knowledge and writing from antiquity. And I thought that was really, really cool. So that's it.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Damn. But they haven't, they're just working on that now? They haven't like found the,
they have to
there's
work on
nothing red on there yet?
Yeah, they have to work on the program to be able to teach the computer what to recognize and what to filter out, I guess, from the images. Like what is text and what is...
That's interesting. Mine's not as interesting as yours. Mine's about CarMax. Stacey and I went to CarMax yesterday. I'm trying to sell my car, which is worth on the private market like, I don't know, 12, 13 grand. I'm like, let's see what CarMax will give me, right? Because that'll make life easy.
It's $50, son.
Just about. I get there. I have to wait an hour for them to like inspect my car, right?
Which, by the way, his car is in perfect condition.
Daddy takes care of his car, all right?
Very obsessed with his car.
Very German.
Yes.
This thing is like 90,000 miles on it, but like, you wouldn't, the interior it's flawless.
And it has a brand new transmission.
The list goes on and on. Anyways, so after an hour of waiting, the lady comes over and like hands me the paper with the offer on it for $7 grand. She's like, "You have any questions?" I'm like, "No."
Wait, hold on. But you didn't mention the part where we sat down and she goes to like show us the Kelly Blue Book.
She's like, "This is how much you can expect. Like, this is kind of the value range of your car, which for trade-in is like 10 grand." And then they come like, so infuriating.
No, but remember what she picked? Like she like, your car is in like almost perfect condition. She's like, "Oh, let's pick good." Which is like,
oh
mediocre.
yeah, when you go to Kelly Blue Book and you get your value, it's like, what condition is your car? And it's like fair, good, very good, excellent. And it's this thing no one else would notice, but I notice these things that salespeople do. When she's putting all info, she's like, condition of your car, let's just say it's good, which is good is the second worst one, right?
So it basically means it has dings or it like the interior's messed up.
It's just this thing that like barely gets mentioned that hugely, it's the key component of the Kelly Blue Book value that like no one's going to notice when they're sitting there at the car dealership. But in the back of my head, I'm like, like she's just glossing over it. Like I know what she's doing. But even with the good, it's like the car's still worth $9 to $10,000, and then I'm sitting there for an hour on a Saturday morning, and they give me $7,000 offer. It was so infuriating because it's just such a waste of my time on a Saturday.
Did you just walk out, or did you
I just like walked out. I'm like, I will never buy a car here. I will never sell. Like that's it. Like I don't know how these people are in business. CarMax is the biggest, most successful used car dealer, and I'm not sure how.
Because they rip people off and then sell the car for $5,000 more.
It's like an insulting offer, and you're wasted. Like I had to drive down. You wasted 2 hours of my time. Like, so yeah, that's my modern thought. Don't go to CarMax. Take that, CarMax. All right, shall we move on to Jojo?
Yeah.
What's wrong, little man? Oh man, if you haven't seen this movie, you need to go see it, and then you need to come back and listen to this. I think it's a perfect movie.
Yeah.
It's so good. But it's gotten mixed reviews. But it's doing good at the box office, so that's good.
Do you want to tell us what the movie's about?
The movie, well, it's a satire on I guess on Nazi Germany, right? And it's about this little boy who's he's like what, Hitler Youth, right? And he has this imaginary friend, which is Taika Waititi, the director, and he's playing Hitler. It sounds ridiculous as I'm saying it.
It is ridiculous, but it is amazing.
Well, it's based on what book, Tubby?
Caging Skies, which I haven't read. I'm sorry. We try to take this very seriously and be prepared, but I just
That's
couldn't.
a modern life first.
Do it.
The movie walks a beautiful line of comedy and tragedy. It is a perfect it is what a satire is supposed to be. And I think everyone needs to watch it. But there's some people that have been like weirded out by the movie, I would say.
Some people think it doesn't go deep enough, but it's supposed to be a comedy.
Well, from the reviews, there's like three camps from what I can tell. Either people love it, or they think it doesn't say enough. It doesn't make a big enough point about how bad Nazi Germany was. Or then there's a third camp which just thinks the movie's not funny, which I think is the worst camp. Like if you don't think this movie's funny, I'm sorry.
The comedy is very British, almost. No?
Is it? No, I think it's just funny. Sorry. He's not even a British. He's from New Zealand. Like I
don't know. It's not an American satire. It's not like, I don't know. I feel like that's
I don't know
where
if
the
Americans
problems
do that good with satire.
I'm not disagreeing with that fact. I'm just stating that it's very European humor. Like there's a lot of that, and I think it's amazing and completely enjoyable. But I feel like that's where the third party is coming in.
I don't know if I agree with that, but I kind of wanted to talk over just analyzing a satire because I think it's worth talking about and mentioning it. Because this is a satire of beliefs and ideologies, not of atrocities committed. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not making fun of the victims of the war. And what you said about it being walking a fine line, I watched a lot of interviews in preparation for this, and Taika Waititi did a lot of testing and tonal testing with audiences. How are they reacting? Do they need something funny here? Is this too funny? Is this making light of things? So he's... he took it extremely seriously.
He's a super thoughtful guy, and everything in his movies is so meticulously planned out. I mean, I remember there was this one behind the scenes thing I saw with him on like the Thor Ragnarok movie where it's maybe like a 3-minute long scene where they're running around, the planet they get stranded on in that movie, the town with all the colors. You maybe see that town for a total of 2 to 3 minutes as they're like running. They're trying to make it to the spaceship. I don't know if you remember that. And there's a whole behind the scenes thing of him walking through the town, and he's like every single like piece of colorful cloth that's hanging, he has like a story for it. And he's like, this is why this is here, and this is why, like, everything is so meticulously planned out. And I just really appreciate him as a filmmaker for doing that. Like you just know he's just not half-assing anything he does.
Absolutely. And also, what I was going to say about satires is that people think repeating something harmful is critique, and that's not true. You can't just say something offensive in a funny way, and then you're like, oh, I made a powerful comment about this. And I see that the word of satire be attributed to movies where I really don't think it is appropriate. Like, for example, Anchorman, which I think there's a lot of really funny stuff in there, but I think just saying sexist things over and over isn't really a good critique of sexism. And another example is, what is that, Get Tough or Get Hard movie with Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell, where
I never saw that.
Where they like just make fun of like sexual assault of men the whole time, and then in an interview they say like, "Oh wow, we're covering some really deep, controversial topics," and it's like, no, you're not. You're not doing any of the work. And I think that's why I just wanted to point that out and think satire is really misunderstood. When what Taika is going for here is like the Mel Brooks stuff or like the Charlie Chaplin, Great Dictator, where there's really a lot of thought to it. And even Chaplin said that if he had known what was going on at the time, he wouldn't have made The Great Dictator.
Right.
Even though everybody's posted on their Facebook always that speech at the end that he gives, right? And then also I watched the Vanity Fair notes on a scene with Taika Waititi and Steve Merchant, who plays the Gestapo head in the movie.
Right.
And I wrote down some quotes because I think they said some really intelligent stuff in there. So Taika said he doesn't like when people say comedy isn't an appropriate medium to examine and comment on real world issues, which I totally agree with. Because people say, oh, you can't use comedy to examine this. And I agree with him. I think that's wrong. I think comedy can often be, not everything has to be a drama to drive home a point.
Right.
And then Steve Merchant said something really interesting too, where he says, this movie fits in a long tradition of movies that have satirized this period in history. Chaplin's The Great Dictator, producers in the 60s. It seems strange that 80 years later, we're feeling that the subject can't be mocked, and the absurdity of Hitler's ideology, which he says to Taika, you've dramatized with the little boy that as soon as you poke holes in these beliefs, they fall apart. And I thought that was really poignant, and I 100% agree with both of them. And I think this movie does an excellent job of that, and these reviews are not, I don't think they're comprehending the amount of thought and care that it's being discussed within this movie.
Yeah. Very well said. I don't even know what else to add to that.
I think a really great example of that is the Heil Hitler joke, which keeps coming back in the movie.
Heil Hitler. Heil Hitler.
Because the movie starts out with them just screaming it at each other, right? And then he runs out of the house, and it's the funniest thing you've ever seen. Like the opening of the movie.
The first 10 minutes is so good.
And by repeating it over and over, and this imaginary Hitler being like, "Hi, me man," like it's almost like taking power away from something that is so terrifying. Mm-hmm. And then later on in the movie, when he brings that back, because he's trying to make fun of it, he's like, oh, I thought this stupid Heil Hitler thing, like, what if they had to say it every time they saw one another? It would be really stupid and funny. Right. And that's what he's doing in the Gestapo scene. But then you also have the gravity of Elsa having to say it when she walks in the room. Yeah, I was about to mention that. You get both sides of it. Exactly. So it's funny, but it's also not taking it lightly, but also making fun of this. Like, my grandma had this story about my grandpa who was in the Hitler Youth, and I guess he had greeted a neighbor with Guten Tag instead of Heil Hitler, and the neighbor was really upset about it. And something as simple as that can become something kind of scary or wrong to do if you're that deep in, living in a dictatorship. So that was just one example I had of like him really knowing what he's doing.
Well, that scene where Stephen Merchant is the Gestapo guy and he comes in the house, I think as far as the heavy aspect of the subject, that was like the most scary part of the movie to me.
Especially the opening line when he says, "May we come in?" And it's a pointless question. Right. Because he doesn't, and Jojo doesn't even say anything because you can't say anything. Right. What are you going to say? No?
But there's just this balance of, there's these little funny bits, but also just Stephen Merchant. He's got this unique look that just the way he's like in all black is also slightly terrifying with his big eyes. And then he's also 2 feet taller than everyone, which really adds to it all.
And they put him on a box too. In that
do they?
scene.
Yeah, okay. Because he's just looking down on everybody. Oh man, it was really like you didn't know what was going to happen right then and there, and you're like, man, are they going to find out? And they're going. It was also so upsetting to me to like for these stupid reasons of like just people going through your house so carelessly.
Yeah.
Because I just imagine the mom being gone and then coming back home. And like, what the hell? Like,
what happened?
Like, I would be so upset if I came home and all my shit was all over the place. You know what I mean?
And Stephen Merchant says about his character that it's basically these like slimy little bureaucrats who suddenly got so much power in the community of like life and death over people.
Yeah.
That's how that was his assessment of his character and what he wanted to portray.
Which, by the way, Stephen Merchant, underrated.
Well, he does a lot of like directing and behind the scenes stuff. So
he's in a lot of movies. And I forgot he was in that Logan movie. Like he can be hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Like he can be hilarious, but he's just also a really good actor, and he's just always playing these little parts, and he's always fantastic. I mean, one of our favorite comedies, Hot Fuzz, he's in there for 2 seconds talking about swans, and it's one of the most memorable scenes. Like, I always quote it. I don't know. I forget like how good that guy is, and he just pops up for like 2 minutes here and there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, underrated.
Great job.
Good job, Steven. Keep going.
Something else I wanted to say about why it works as a satire is that last moment between Jojo and Hitler, which you have to have, right? Mm-hmm. You need that narrative-wise. You need Hitler to come back one last time. You can't just have that character disappear.
Right.
But then also it's a really good symbolism of even after the war, this hold that this ideology had on you, even when he's dead, you know, you grew up in this world and believing all these things. Mm-hmm. So Taika comes back, he's got that like bullet hole in his head, and he's like, one last help me, and then Jojo kicking him through the window. And that moment of catharsis, like both times I saw the movie, I just wanted to jump up and be like, yes! Like, and if it wasn't a satire, if it was somehow glorifying Hitler, you'd be sad at that moment. And this is another indicator of why this works, because you're like, yes, finally, like he's free of this.
Free of the shackles.
Free of this influence.
Talk about how amazing the cast is.
Oh my gosh. So many notes on it.
This is the beauty of... So Taika made some independent movies, then all of a sudden Marvel throws him a bone, and he makes one of the best Marvel movies of the last 10 years. That's just absolutely entertaining and awesome and different from all, you know, everything else coming out at the time. And then now you have this leverage to be like, hey, I'm going to make this really tiny movie, but everyone wants to work with you. So you get all these stars to work with you, even though you don't really have a big budget, because they just want to work with you. Like,
nobody wanted to. He had this idea for this movie 10 years ago, and he couldn't get it off the ground. And then after Thor, they're like, oh, because he's pitching this movie, like, what if I was like, there's this imaginary Hitler figure. Nobody wants to make this movie. And then Scarlett Johansson said in an interview that she heard about it from Chris Hemsworth, because they're working together, and Chris Hemsworth knew about this script from working on Thor Ragnarok, and then she got involved. Like, yeah, people want to be part of it.
That's the thing. You all of a sudden overnight, you're like in a position of, okay, whatever you want to do, like here's the money for whatever movie. Like we're not going to question what movie we want to do, and then you get all these, you know, Sam Rockwell, Scarlett Johansson. Who am I forgetting?
Yeah, those are the two.
Rebel Wilson's no small.
Alfie Allen.
Yeah, it's just like these people just want to, because at the end of the day, most of these actors, like they also want to do meaningful like art and good acting work. They don't want to just be in Marvel movies 24/7. So, yeah, I mean, it's this perfect storm.
ScarJo's best role that I've ever seen her in.
Ever?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought that she was phenomenal.
She did do phenomenal.
Yeah, I almost wish... Do you think it's also... how do I say this? Like, part of me wishes there was even more of her in this movie, but then it makes it so much better.
Yeah.
Because she's amazing and you only get so much of her.
Yeah.
No, I think
does that elevate it?
I think her role was like perfect in Pac-Man. Like she's like this. I think too much would have like dulled importance on her. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to say?
No, it does.
Because I think that you just fall in love with her. She's like the perfect mom.
Right. mother.
Yeah,
that scene where she is pretending to be the dad. Like,
that scene
amazing.
is incredible.
Yeah.
That entire dinner scene, I think it's one of the great scenes that reminds me a little bit of the bar scene in Glorious Bastards, just because so much happens in that scene. To me, that's one of the greatest just scenes in one setting.
Right.
And the dinner table scene, so much happens narrative-wise. You find out stuff about the dad. You have so many sweet moments.
Right.
Her acting in that when she's like dancing with the bottle. It's just, I'm like crying. It's so incredible.
My God.
And also the beginning of it is so funny when Hitler's sitting at the table with them and he's doing the like head movements of like, you know, whenever Jojo says something. Like, I just thought it was brilliant from beginning to end.
Well,
Just that
I
scene.
think you also, like, we forget, oh yeah, Scarlett Johansson's a really good actress. Because, I mean, what has she been in? I will run it down for you. She was in Marriage Story, which I never saw.
That's
right?
coming out.
I think, is it
it's a
already
new
out?
one, yeah.
I'm saying before
That
that,
looks good.
we
that
have.
one's supposed to be really good.
So the last two
Netflix
movies
movie,
was
right?
Jojo Rabbit and Marriage
Rabbit.
Story. Before that, you have Avengers, Captain Marvel, Avengers. Then she's the voice in that Isle of Dog movie. She's in that
She's
comedy of Rough Night, which I never saw. She's in Ghost in the Shell. Then she's another voice in an animated movie, Captain America. Another voice in Jungle Book. Like, she's just doing action
she was
movies
great
and
in Jungle
voiceover.
Book.
I know, but it's just, there's more of an impact when you see the actual actor.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the last, and this is back to 2006, 2015, Avengers again. I mean, I'm trying to, the last real movie, like 2014 Chef. Between
She was
2000,
barely in that.
yeah, but I'm saying, but she's great in it. I'm saying between 2014 and now, it's just been mostly action movies and voiceovers. And then you see her in this, and you're like, oh yeah, Scarlett Johansson's amazing. We forgot.
Oh my God.
Like,
just
she's better than
incredible.
just Black Widow.
And the kid who plays Jojo, who's also amazing, he said it was really helpful to him to have somebody working with somebody else who's also a child actor and who could, you know, feel what he was going
Right.
through. And she
Right.
comes from a similar background and experience.
Yeah, she's amazing. Oscar nominee?
I hope
We'll
she gets
see.
nominated for this. Yeah. But part of me hopes it's kind of evil, but watching the movie, I was kind of like, I wish she was a little less brave. Because, like, she's maybe don't go around. Like, she's such a, like, ideal, like, freedom fighter to the point where that
Oh, she's not
didn't
very
really,
careful at all.
She's not.
No.
She is responsible for two people, and they're probably also already like on the bad list because there's some gossip about the dad.
Right.
Then she's maybe don't go around like distributing leaflets like when you already have so much other dangerous stuff that you're
Yeah.
dealing with, and also at the dinner table scene where she tells her son who's been indoctrinated and Nazi youth were instructed to report on their parents and to keep tabs on their parents. She tells him that she's not in favor of the war and that she also has access to real news and troop movement. I'm like, maybe, which is part of the theme of the movie. How do you raise a kid to be a good
Right.
person when that's not
Everything
an option,
around them
when
is
it's not
not, yeah.
allowed? So it makes sense for the movie, but I was just so terrified in that scene when she's like, life is great. Like the Allies have taken Italy or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, like maybe don't tell your son that.
Right.
Because as soon as he tells it to someone else, they're going to be like, how would you know that?
Yeah.
Like, ugh, scary.
I don't. I mean, so my favorite character is definitely Sam Rockwell in this movie. I would say.
Yeah, by far. I mean, not by far. They're actually all really good. The little boy is the best friend.
I like.
phenomenal.
I like
Archie
Sam.
Yates, yeah.
It's just something you don't always see a lot. Where it's okay. Here's this guy. He's in the ranks. He's a Nazi, but there's a real nuance. Like, because it's always like not every Nazi is just like the devil. Where Sam Rockwell's character, he doesn't really care about the Jews that much, right?
He just wants to be fabulous.
He wants
With
to
the
be
fabulous costume.
I love that.
I just think he's got a really nice nuance in his character, and then I mean he's hilarious, and he's also super gay, and
I think he also feels a little guilty at the end when he tells Jojo, your mom was an actually good person. I always wonder if he's kind of reflecting upon himself, and then he does that last act of like, saving Jojo.
Right.
He doesn't feel like he did the most he could have done, maybe.
Right, because the mom like didn't compromise on her beliefs to where I'm not making excuses for anybody, but
she's irresponsible though at the same time.
it's really like, I don't know if like people realize it's so hard. Like, what do you do when everything around you is not within your beliefs? Like, do you try to fit in? Like, do you go totally against the grain? It's a really...
I would try to fit in. I would be terrified. I would be terrified all day. Like
right.
But that's what
enabled the whole thing. Right.
Enabled
Totally.
The whole thing is it just standing there and doing nothing.
I'm not going to sit here and say like, if I had been alive, I would have saved it.
The thing is, everyone like points, you point to Hitler for the Nazis when the reality is it's every individual in that country that ultimately enables it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because nobody is standing up to it.
Right, but I also can't imagine that level of fear and indoctrination living in a dictatorship. Because why you can say the same thing about why is nobody in North Korea just like standing up and...
I'm not saying it's easy or everyone...
Yeah.
I mean, it's a way more complicated issue than that.
Exactly. Which the movie does a great job of showing.
But at the end of the day, it's like, well, do you just go along and enable all this and then you end up being part of the problem? Or do you risk death, but go with your values and beliefs?
I don't think that she would have been the same. Everything she did was kind of challenging authority. I don't think that you could have bought into the character if she wasn't as brave as she was.
But she already did so much. Like, part of me was like, just be more careful. I'm just scared the whole time, and I think that's what you hardly nowadays you ever get shocked in a movie. And her death in the movie, which was again brilliant, the whole thing with the shoes, I did not see that coming at all. And both times I'm like, it's sickening almost, and you don't really have those reactions in movies anymore.
You guys wondered why I didn't cry, because I'm a very easy crier. But I think it was because I knew that was going to happen.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Of course you knew.
No, I didn't.
Stacey knows all the
Then
plot
why did
twists.
you sit there going,
Because I the way they did it.
The way they did it is
surprised
really
me. Yeah, the way they
incredible.
did it surprised me. I think that was... I mean, I knew something was up with the shoes because they kept going to it, but I didn't realize... I knew that there was something with the whole making the kids stare at that because they like wanted
I knew
to
that
draw
was going to
attention.
happen because I knew he was in the same plaza again, and he's just following this butterfly, and like I knew he was going to run into these people hanging there, but then you're like, oh, I like didn't know his mom was going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, it was just it was very visually shocking for me.
incredible.
But it was not surprising emotionally, if that makes sense.
It was for me. This movie it worked on me completely.
Yeah. Oh man. But just last part on Sam Rockwell, we just need to give a shout out to his costume at the end of the movie,
I want to wear
which
that.
is amazing.
His like eyebrow raise with the
Like
smoky
eyeliner
eye.
and feathers on his helmet, and it's so good. Like, how is that not funny to people? Like,
Yeah, I don't get it.
if you don't think this movie is funny, like you are dead inside. I'm sorry. It's just the opening 20 minutes. It just start right when you get Fox 20th Century, and usually it's the drums like dun 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. And it goes into like this Nazi music.
Which is the theme they composed for the movie, which I really like.
Like
Actually.
right there, I was already I'm already laughing as the 20th Century Fox logo is popping
that's
up.
amazing. Actually,
It's not easy to do. Like I don't think people realize that. And then just the boy yelling with Hitler, like this pep talk, like
yeah.
and the boy's just running out of the house, and he's so happy.
So funny.
It's just so amazing. Just like dying laughing.
Just everything. Like when Taika's like, I have to go. We're having unicorn tonight for dinner. and then he jumps out of the window, just like gone. I think my favorite part, which was also in the trailer, which I don't know, you can watch this trailer and not be excited for this movie, but maybe I'm just more familiar with Taika's work. But that scene of them running. We're running like a couple of antelopes, and Taika's running sideways with the finger guns.
I wish you could see Sam right now.
I'm shimmying in my seat.
Incredible. It's the best thing I ever see.
I just looked over at Tabby, and Tabby got a tattoo on her, and I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh yeah, Tabby got a tattoo.
Too. I'm getting have to get
really
used
weirded
to it.
out.
You have to get used to it.
Well, so I want to talk about why maybe this doesn't work for people, because I feel like...
Because they're stupid.
No, I just feel people, maybe in the U.S. specifically, have a very different way of thinking about World War II.
They love thinking about World War II.
Yeah, but
they're obsessed with it.
Not in a comedy way, because I think they think of Pearl Harbor and like innocent kids going to war and like having to fight the Nazis. Like, they think of Saving Private Ryan, you know, like I think it's very much more dark and serious as to where, like, you know, we're just 1 or 2 generations removed from, you know, our grandpa was, you know, they tried. I think, you're going to dive into that more, but like he was involved in that whole time. You know, he was a kid growing up in that time. Like, we're not that far removed from it, and so I don't know. Maybe when you have that. When you're born in Germany and you grow up with that and you have that kind of dark cloud hovering over you, like you need that humor maybe. Like I want to see the humor in this.
Right,
you know what I mean?
But then also just going back to what Steve Merchant says, then why? Because all these movies like The Great Dictator and The Producers, they're all made by Americans. You know, they're all... Why could we be funny last century and now we can't be funny anymore?
But that's with a lot of things.
I feel like we're going through this whole time in the United States where we're like everything is being taken so seriously and so sensitively that you're like so scared to like
I don't know.
But if I'm in the hands of a filmmaker who's this incredible and this talented, don't you feel
because
safe
I think
then?
You know what? Okay, like I don't know. Well, the Dictator was forever ago. Like, let's take a more recent example: The Producers, because maybe it's 1 degree removed from it. It's Jewish guys on Broadway making a musical about it. With this movie, it's like there's someone playing Hitler right there. And I don't know if people get really weirded out with that. Like yesterday, you know, so I'm a bartender at a restaurant and I'm talking to these regulars they go see movies all the time. So that's what I talk to them about. Like, hey, what do you guys see in this? They're going to a movie like every single weekend. I'm like, what are you guys seeing? And they were asking me, like, have you seen anything recently? I'm like, well, I saw Jojo Rabbit on Thursday. Like, that was so good. And they both of them looked at me and they're like, really? Like, it looked really weird in the trailer. It didn't. I just don't. Yeah. I can't click with that. Like,
because we both watched the trailer and we were like, oh,
the second I saw a trailer, I'm like, this is amazing. I'm going to go see this.
That's what I'm talking about with the difference in the humor.
Right.
Like, I feel like, and I know it's time and time again, I see like these kind of, like, I think the first one I watched with you was, I don't remember the name. Where they were like trying to clean, you just quoted
Hot
it.
Fuzz.
Yeah, Hot Fuzz. But it's like that kind of humor. It's like over the top, but it's not like a druggy movie, which is like where I think we go a lot of times with like humor.
True.
Or like it's just really
Americans love drug humor.
Smart. It's like smart ridiculous. Does that make sense? I feel like we don't do that in the United States a lot. Like smart ridiculous.
I don't know, maybe that's just mainstream. I don't want to make this blanket statement about like
no.
Americans
I'm just talking
aren't
about
smart enough.
No. I'm not making that. I'm just saying there's a difference in the humor, and you guys don't seem to grasp it. But I was born and raised here, and I feel like I see the difference. I like the humor, though. Does that make sense?
Well, no, I know the difference in the humor. It's right now like these American comedies are going through this. It's all very verbal improv humor to where some other stuff coming out like Hot Fuzz and like Jojo Rabbit, yeah, that's maybe part of it, but there's other kinds of humor like physical humor, which I'm a huge fan of.
Americans do that really well, don't you think? Physical humor, or some American Like Ryan
feel like-
Reynolds and
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we used to be better at it. Like I think of Kramer on Seinfeld,
Right.
And now I think of
Ace Ventura.
We had this generation of like Will Ferrell, who can be hilarious, but it's all, and Judd Apatow, where it's all very much, hey, we're going to just roll the camera and you improvise and try to say funny things. There isn't a lot of that physical humor going on. But that's why I love movies like Hot Fuzz, because it does add that stuff in there.
I feel like we went through a phase in the early 90s, like with like Ace Ventura and like Jim Carrey was very physical, like in his humor.
I'm
I
saying
think that
we're, like, on
people
the
got
other
kind
spectrum
of
of that.
like tired of it. Yeah.
Even someone like Ryan Reynolds, who is amazing physically, you put him in a comedy action movie like Deadpool, and it's all about like, okay, what's the filthiest thing this character can like? It's a lot more verbal. So I don't know.
I actually have, I'm going to change topic slightly because I want to talk about the accents, because you just reminded me about the improvisation bit. Mm-hmm. Because Steve Merchant said that, I don't know why I watched a lot of stuff with him, but because when you're learning an accent for a role and it's a drama or a thriller, you have your rehearsed lines. Mm-hmm. But then when a director is telling you, oh, just improvise, just play around, it's very difficult to do that while also keeping an accent. And then Sam Rockwell said they fixed a lot of stuff in EDR afterwards, which is voiceover. Mm-hmm. And the accents here they're not perfect, but that's what makes it so cute
part of the charm,
and enjoyable, because I've also never seen this many different kinds of people where you have Australian, New Zealand, American, different UK accents, like the protagonist's accents is very different from Steve Merchant's accent.
Like JoJo's friend, I thought, just had a British twang to it the whole time, which he does. He's a British kid, but it's like it doesn't matter in a satire. It doesn't need to be completely historically accurate. It actually kind of adds to the charm, I think, right?
Rebel Wilson's like Australian German accent is hilarious. It's so adorable.
Like Sam Rockwell has a terrible German accent, but it doesn't matter.
Sam Rockwell, what trips him up and what trips most Americans up is adding too much rhoticity in your accent, which is pronouncing R's, which you don't do in German accents. That's why British accents can sometimes sound more authentic when they're trying to do a German accent.
Taika as Hitler had the best German accent, I thought.
But we already knew that from What We Do in the Shadows, where
That's
he
true.
nails it. Even when he's speaking in German, he sounds like a native.
Yeah.
But sometimes his Kiwi accents comes out, and then you're like, oh, that's adorable. Like, I like that. But actually something about Sam Rockwell's accent that I really liked. Some of his stuff that he says is so spot on. Like, he can obviously do it, and he's working hard on it. Like, that line where he's like, maybe we can think of something for you to do. Like, it sounds spot on. And also he does something that I found really cool, where he's just it's not an accent, but he's just pronouncing English words with German phonology rules. So he'll say like blowing stuff up. So if I'm speaking with an accent, I would still say stuff. I wouldn't say stuff, but he adds that sh sound in there, and then it makes it more like, oh, this is kind of Germanish, And I like that. I thought it was really endearing. And
when you also have to think about so someone like Sam Rockwell, who is just doing a million movies all the time, and then you have this small budget movie that's probably being shot in a month and a half.
Is it small budget? A month and a half?
I guarantee you. Let's see. What is the budget for this? Dude, I'm telling you that, especially for his part got shot in a couple weeks. He's not in the movie like that much. So it's not like a $200 million movie where there's 3 months to prep, and he probably has a few weeks to prep his accent. I'm not making any excuses for you, Sam. You're still perfect. It was a $13 million budget. That's nothing. Especially considering all the stars.
It doesn't look like it. It looks really good.
Oh, no, it looks amazing. But all these actors are busy. Taika's getting ready to make another Thor movie. Has 2 other movies in production. There's not a lot of, prep on the
Well, how long did it take to film?
It's a great question. I'm just telling you, it couldn't have been that long. It's a few months at most. Because they all have a lot going on. And it's not like this movie has a bunch of special effects and it's all in a few different locations. Like, you're knocking this movie out in a few months.
Yeah.
I just think of someone like Packy, who we know, who can film a whole horror movie in a month and a half.
Oh, right.
And because you're just working 24/7 and you're just knocking the movie out.
Yeah.
It's not like a 6-month Avengers shoot.
Just to finish with the accents really quick, Scarlett Johansson's accent, which I think only wavered once when in that bedroom scene where she's putting Jojo to bed. What I loved about it, and it's so authentic to me because it sounds like my mom and it doesn't sound cartoonish. And it doesn't sound like somebody trying to do an accent, it just sounds like somebody having an accent. And I hope she gets nominated for Best Supporting Role for this or something, because she just blew my mind in this. Thought it was incredible. And then the main kid who tried to do an accent once or twice but didn't quite get it. That's fine. He's a little kid.
This is like first acting role ever,
and he
too,
was
by the way.
Amazing. And watching it the second time, I really paid attention to when something emotional happened and his voice almost wavers and he's so in touch with his emotions, and portraying that on film, I'm like, what? How can a little kid do that? And they've really lucked out with this, both the kids, him and Archie Yates, who's also hilarious. What's his name? Yorkie in the film. He's like, at your service.
He's been in something else, hasn't he? Because I've seen him in a bunch of
I
things.
think so, but I think his name is Archie Yates.
Let's find out. Your cute little face. What's he been in? Oh yeah, this is the only thing he's ever been in.
Oh really? Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
He looks like somebody
He
else.
looks familiar.
Huh?
I don't know, but I mean, Taika likes to work with kids, so I think he also has a talent of maybe communicating with them and finding children who are going to fit.
Well, he's very young at heart.
He's a clown.
He is a clown.
Why don't you talk about the Beatlemania thing? Because you had to explain that to me in the beginning, because I didn't catch that at all.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I'm like, if someone as smart as you isn't catching some things, then
I just don't know anything about music.
No, it just makes me wonder, is the average audience, like, there's no way they're getting all the jokes, right? Like, is that also part of the disconnect, maybe?
Huh.
I don't know. That was just a thought I had.
But nobody else is laughing at, that's just my two vinegar. I think that line is hilarious to me, but...
Yeah, so in the beginning of the movie, it's cutting all this black and white World War II footage of people just going crazy. It's cutting it together in the same style some of the Beatlemania footage was cut together. And it's just showing, like, girls passing out and people screaming and, like, wah! And... But it's
a Nazi rally. And
it's like showing Hitler coming off the plane, which is that famous footage of the Beatles landing around the world, and they're coming out. It's just cut in that very same style, and it's also playing a German cover of "I Want to Hold Your Hand" from the Beatles over that.
It's the Beatles actually singing that.
Oh, is it? Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. Okay, I didn't have time to look that up, but I was like, that sounds like the Beatles trying. They actually do a decent job singing in German.
Yeah, they did well.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was just so unique, and it was also really funny. And again, really, I mean, it just sets the tone for the satire, but it's part of the whole intro and you're laughing. I'm like, oh, that's like genius. That's really funny.
And from what I saw, Taika wanted to contemporize it and give it more of a modern comparison.
Sure.
But he isn't saying like Beatles fans are like Nazis. That wasn't
Oh God.
That wasn't the point.
Was that
I
a
can
YouTube
see
comment you
somebody
read?
like writing that on Instagram.
How dare they use the Beatles song over Hitler footage?
Which is chilling. It's chilling to watch that fanaticism and militarism, and it's absolutely terrifying. I want to talk about the color palette, which was very intentional by Taika, because he says Germany was very colorful at the time, and we only see World War II movies in this dirt, brown, muted,
a lot of brown,
tanks,
beige,
gray, and just the wallpaper in the house was such a pleasure and such a joy to look at, and the set design was incredible. You
see that a little bit in Inglourious Bastards 2, though, I think, where some of the colors really pop. No?
Oh, yeah.
Like you get the lush landscape. If I remember right, the Germans had like green uniforms where there's some of the reds are really popping out. I mean, Tarantino did a good job with that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of colors and tasty apple desserts, and yeah, there's more than just gray tanks.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Which
it's a beautiful
also,
movie.
Yeah, it humanizes it more. Not that you're sympathizing with the Nazis at any point, but I mean, that's what Sam Rockwell's character is for, right? Because it's just this character. That's a guy who's just lost, and he doesn't. You get the vibe.
You don't have a choice.
He feels like he doesn't have a choice, and he knows he's part of the problem. Then he helps the kid in the very end, and I like that's why I like the complexity of his character so much. You just don't see that ever with Nazi characters, that all like nuances, like that these people were still human. I think maybe that's the most powerful thing for me. It's not just this one mono character that this is all they are. Like there's just these, like they're still a human person, and there's nuances to that.
Right, because Nazis in American movies are always white people shouting. Right,
Right.
like,
It's
that's
just
the only
they're
thing.
just the bad guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Which
know.
I think they did a nice job of Rebel Wilson, like throwing in like the joking aspect of that character. Like she's supposed to be like,
It's a great time to be a woman for Germany.
I've had 18 kids for Germany. She has my favorite line in the movie, which is when she says, "Oh, Gott." So funny.
Just the beginning where it's like summer camp for Nazi youth, like Coach K, everybody. Or was it Coach? No, not
Captain
Coach. Is it Coach K?
Yeah, Captain K.
Oh man.
Oh,
And that's
yeah,
also
she's
part of
hilarious.
that's also part of I think Taika modernizing it, right? It's just all these modern. It's like summer camp, the Beatles.
Well, they had that. They had those.
I know, but
camps.
just the way because it's like a modern camp where it's like,
Right.
you know what I
right.
mean?
The bonfire.
You-
It's time to burn some books.
yeah. I think there's a beauty in modernizing that, which makes it more relatable. Because the actual camps were probably just very rigid and stiff, and
oh, you mean they weren't throwing
know.
bombs?
no, they weren't.
They weren't beating each other with rocks.
Well, practice grenade throwing was a thing, even in regular gym class, like in school.
yeah, actually, let me dive into that really quickly.
Yeah, let's talk about
because
it.
this movie sparked this whole conversation between me and my dad. So my Opa, for 10 years, you have Rassenlehre, which is like racial studies. So like by the time the war ended, he's like 18. How do you start your personality and being a human being from zero? Because like right up until, because you're being indoctrinated over and over, and like this is what that scene in the movie of Rebel Wilson, like this is what a Jew looks like. You have that for like your entire growing up, right? And then I also there's an article by this guy did a lot of writing. He was part of the Hitler Youth. Alfons Heck, he's since passed away, but he writes about how he would have died for Hitler. Like this was his thing. Like the Hitler Youth
Right.
was so, seductive, and you wanted to be there and you wanted to do well. And he says, my indoctrination wasn't like, this isn't an excuse for what I was. It's just a fact. You didn't have another choice or another personality. Like that's why I'm saying like, oh, you dream of like, oh, if I would have been alive at the time, I would have been a freedom fighter, and you wouldn't have even known that there was another
Right.
world out there. Like
Sure.
our Opa believed that they were going to win right up until the very end. My dad said like, oh, selbst mit Wunderwaffen, like they believed there was all this technology and crazy weapons that they had access to, and they were going to, wipe out the rest of the world.
Right.
And it's just so silly to us now, which is what the movie does so well of like, again, poking holes in that ideology. Yeah, and then another really interesting story was about, as a Hitler Youth, you were expected to have seen Hitler, right? To go to these rallies and like shake his hand and
right.
like, oh my God, that's what the Beatlemania is about,
Yeah.
right? You were
Yeah.
expected to do that. And so him and his class were marched to have, sorry, I'm trying to translate all this in my mind because I had this conversation in German. That's why I'm kind of stuttering. But yeah, to have this interview to be part of the SS. And my Opa is like a teenager at the time because they just needed cannon fodder, right? They just needed more recruits. And Opa did end up in the army later on. But even him, and as indoctrinated as he was, he knew he didn't want to be part of the SS because it meant a certain degree of brutality and inhumanity. So when they interview him, they ask, oh, have you seen the Führer? Because they expect him to have been to these rallies, right? And he pretends to be an idiot. He's like, oh yeah, I've seen him. And they're like, where? And he points to the poster and he's like, he's right there.
Well, there's like,
yeah.
so like, we'll set the scene. It's like you're in an office. There's a guy behind the
Yeah.
desk, and it's like when you go to any public office here, like there's a picture of the president up, right?
Right.
So there's a picture
There's
of Hitler.
pictures everywhere
Yeah, there's
of
a picture of
Hitler.
Hitler behind this guy's desk, and then he's like,
yeah, he's like,
I see him
he's right there. So they thought he was an idiot, and he he pretended to be an idiot so he wouldn't be drafted into the SS.
Yeah.
Which I find curious that even at that point, you feel like something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to get more info when my opa was alive, but he just wouldn't talk about that time. And that's something my dad said too, that it was just so difficult to get anything out of that generation and have them talk on all sides,
Right.
even to have victims and survivors talk about that. And that was the danger of the Germans, of us covering it up and saying like, oh, this never happened, because there was a huge movement towards that. And I think gladly so many people did speak up and write books about it and write about the horrific experience both in the concentration camps and in the Hitler Youth and in all these aspects of life. And it's just, again, you can't imagine what it's like being in a dictatorship and being surrounded by this 24/7 and then having to start your life over and realizing afterwards, which is that scene in the movie, right, where Archie Yates is like, oh, Hitler hid a lot of stuff from us, and like things weren't what they were, and then you're like, wait, what was everything I believed in and thought was true?
I like that's kind of the same disconnect when like the Berlin Wall fell and like you have East Germany and West Germany, like they were expected to when we did the last podcast,
which is going to be coming out after this episode.
Oh, just kidding.
No, go ahead.
It's good.
Go ahead.
It's a good teaser.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just like everything they had grown up in the last 40 years and then like expected to like have that ideology like challenge and change. It's just like, it's kind of the same thing, no?
Yeah. It's not quite as harsh and terrifying, but I would say it's similar.
Well, it's just a lot of nuance and everything. And I think we forget that. We just think black and white, good guys, bad guys.
Well, they were bad, but they didn't have a choice.
Right. I'm just saying to find the nuance within the bad, it rarely happens. And then to find the nuance in the good. I mean, I wish someone would talk about all the bad things. The U.S. I mean, the U.S. wasn't just like a perfect angel during World War II. You know what I mean?
We're not angels in any.
I'm just saying.
In any of our history,
I'm saying Nazi
honestly.
era specifically. I mean, the U.S. didn't even want to enter the war until Pearl Harbor. I mean, there's a lot of evidence they let Pearl Harbor happen because they knew they had to go to the war, but they didn't. There wasn't public support for it, so they needed something like Pearl Harbor. You know, like there's so much.
There's just a history of the U.S. not getting involved with Europe, and that was their policy, which I 100% understand. But even if you look at a place like the U.K., they had to fight Germany because Germany was like, we did the math, and our German soldiers are going to take over the whole world like a bunch of idiots. They didn't go there to be heroes and save Jews and save, Jews and all these refugees were being turned back, and they had to go back to Germany, I think. And I think that's the danger there, which we've talked about before, is painting people as these open-minded heroes when really there was a lot. It was a terrible time in history and a lot of prejudice all over the world, which is why Nazi Germany happened in the first place.
Yes. That's a good spot to end.
No, I'm
you
not
got something else? Oh my God, how much more you got?
I'm sorry. I just want to talk about Alfie Allen because he was my absolute favorite character in the movie.
Sam Rockwell's sidekick?
And he just watching him in the background when he's like got the headphones on, he's listening to music in the background, and that whole scene with the German shepherds, and just I thought their relationship was so adorable and so cute, and you could really feel this like love between them.
I need to see the movie again because there's so many. I don't even remember half the stuff because there's so much going on. You know what I mean? It's a very packed movie.
And that is, again, a brilliant joke at the end when the German shepherds are fighting.
God, so
and
good.
You see that with the kids, and even women were fighting because by the end of the war, they were just sending anybody out there. Little kids, they were putting guns in their hands, and it's funny in the movie, but it's also like true. Oh, and also the thing at the end, I consulted 3 different World War II experts and tried to Google it. Nobody had any evidence or stories about people just being executed in the streets like they show with Sam Rockwell. And I've found no evidence of them doing that to children. So that I'm fine with that being made up for the movie. I was just trying to find out more about that. And I couldn't, people were being released as prisoner of wars. And then you have, of course, those famous trials for the higher up people in the Nazi regime. just a little history facts that I tried to...
I'd be surprised
try
if
to
it didn't
Google.
happen, at least because you have,
And the immediate, like, paranoia and hysteria that...
right.
Yeah, sure, I just couldn't find anything
Because
on
scandalous
it.
shit happens in war and it's not always documented. So I'm sure there was somebody out there just shooting Nazis on the spot, but it's definitely wasn't a common occurrence. And no evidence that it happened to children.
Also, something I think the movie did really well was using actual German writing, which was all grammatically correct, thank the Lord. But I was actually going to ask you, Stacey, as somebody who doesn't read or write it, I thought the movie did it well of like, oh, if you get this, you get this, but if you don't, you're not missing anything.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I missed anything.
Okay. Because I don't think
Like
the
the
movie,
writing on the metal costumes, right?
or when she writes Dummkopf on the like
Yeah.
writing, or it says the Jew, but in German on the chalkboard.
Right.
I thought that you could still get it, but it was also respectful of actually using.
Well, it's also very simple. Like, okay, when Jojo sent out to collect metal, he's wearing this big, like, red robot. I'm
Metal
laughing
for
just thinking about
Germany.
it. And there's on the costume, it's written in German. I mean, I forget, like, help, we need metal or
Right,
something like that, right?
yeah.
And it's all fairly small except for the metal part is in
you're
huge.
right.
It's in huge caps, and metal in German and metal in
Metall is the
English
same,
is basically the same word. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously something you thought about because that translates. You don't need to know German. You see, robot, metal, get it.
I've just seen so many movies that take place in. I think the Anna Karenina movie was like this too, where it takes place in Russia, but then everything is written in English, and you just see some people not following through. And I appreciate it how much care Taika takes, especially with the writing in the book. It looked like kids writing. That was the type of cursive like I learned in school, and it looked like a little kid writing it. And even the drawings were kind of like kid drawings, except for maybe that last one of the rabbit and the cage, where it almost felt like a different style. And I think that was the point of that, him opening the page up to that, where it was like a symbolism of what's happening.
Right.
Which I can 100% understand. This kid has just lost everybody. Like, he doesn't want to lose another person. Him lying to Elsa at the end.
Yeah,
of
we
the
didn't even talk
movie.
about the lady that's hiding in the attic.
Who does she does a really good accent too, actually. She does a
she was
really
good.
Job.
She was really good.
I think she did phenomenal, especially in that one scene where she's like having to pretend that she's German.
Oh my God. Oh,
and you
so
just like
scary.
see, because she doesn't say anything and it's all in her facial expression, like the torment, but like she's hiding it. It was really done very well.
Yeah.
Because you felt it.
There's of this complete difference in characters when the mom dies and like the boy's having a breakdown as he should, and she's already lost everyone. So her reaction compared, she's like, yep, it's like another
day in the life.
person.
Yeah.
Yep. Which,
Yeah, the ending of the movie is perfect thematically, narrative, like it makes sense. But then logically, I'm like, wait, where are you guys going? Don't you have to wait for the dad to come back? Like, don't you want to wait for that? They say later on that they're like, oh, dad's gonna come back after the war. I'm like, where are you going? You don't have money or food or a house. Like, you should stay there.
It's true.
I'm just worried.
Little kid's gonna fend for himself. But how old is she? Like, what, 16, 17? How old is she
said
supposed to
she's
be,
17,
right?
I think, in the movie.
Yeah, so she's gonna take care of him.
Also, she has some of the most insightful lines.
Yeah.
Where she's like, you're just a kid in a uniform who wants to be part of a club.
Yeah.
That was so point on. And when she was describing her people, she's like, we've been chosen by God and we've wrestled angels. And you're like, oh, that's such a great line.
She's the only character that isn't really silly at any point in the movie.
No,
she
serious
just brings the whole thing down to
you're
earth.
right.
You know what I mean? Like, you
She
need that
gravitates,
character.
Yeah.
You're right.
Even the mom has funny scenes when she's praying to the dad and she smears the ass.
when
like,
she does the like puppet thing.
yeah,
when
like
she's
everyone,
walking in
it's a comedy, it's a satire. Everyone's doing silly stuff at one point, and that is, what's her name, Elsa? Mm-hmm. That's the one character that really ground you, because you need that. You need something to ground the whole movie.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lot of weight to put on a kid actor. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, without that, it doesn't work. Then it's just too silly, and you don't get the serious side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I think something that I was confused about and that finally makes sense to me, because the movie takes place over half a year. Mm-hmm. And even towards that end of the war, there were a lot of food shortages.
Yeah.
But I think the movie's trying to show, by the end of the war, we're like looking around in trash to find food. In the beginning, it was more abundant. But time-wise, it doesn't make that much sense to me, because Sam Rockwell takes one bite out of an apple and then he throws it away. Or they kill that rabbit and then they throw it away. And I'm like, whoa, like you would never. Mm-hmm. You would never during like the war.
But then you have the other side of it where the mom, she's not eating dinner because she's going to give her she's going to give her food to Elsa, right?
I thought that was a little inconsistent in the movie. But it was also just to show that these kids are just so evil.
Which is part of the satire, right? Like Sam Rockwell's just he takes one bite and throws it away.
Yeah, he's like
well, no, it was also like beginning versus end too, no?
Which is what he was trying to show, but then time-wise, with it only being half a year, it doesn't make that much. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But again, he's flawless. I'm sorry, Taika. He's my man. He's yet to fail. He's just knocking it out of the park.
He's got this thing going for him where he can now make whatever movie he wants.
Give it to me.
And he's also a solid star. Like he can headline a movie as an actor too. He's got having both of those. It's really powerful when you're a famous director and then also a semi-famous actor. I mean,
and writer. He wrote the screenplay.
And writer, yeah.
He's
too talented. He needs to go.
Yeah.
I don't know where this. He just came out of nowhere. It's just making little New Zealand movies. I mean, thank God. Okay, I know. If it wasn't for Marvel, this movie doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of that.
That's true. And his role in What We Do in the Shadows was so important for me at the time. I think people only became familiar with him after Thor. But we knew about him before that because I've never seen a person of color play a German person in the movie.
I don't even know how we found out about
that vampire movie.
It's something you found out because you made me watch it. I don't even know how that got on your radar.
And then we watched Hunt for the Wilder People.
Yeah.
And
which is great. Yeah, he's fantastic.
That is a great movie.
What else you got? Anything?
No, I'm sorry. I'm done talking.
I think we covered a lot. I think we're good.
Turn it off.
10 out of 10. I didn't mention in the beginning, but we do have a new website, modernlifepodcast.com. Think about that for a second. We're also on Instagram and Twitter at modernlifepod. You can email us at modernlifepod@gmail.com. We're always here for you if you want to talk. Just shoot us an email. On that note, 10 out of 10. You like the movie, Stacey, right?
I love the movie.
You love the movie.
Yeah.
I know you like the movie. I didn't know how much you liked the movie.
No, I love the movie.
Okay. Yeah, I'm down to see it again for sure.
Brilliant. And it was brilliant. Nah.
Yeah, you just don't get movies like this a lot anymore.
Yeah, it's rare. It's a
small budget
treasure.
with star actors and star director and a really interesting subject matter that's done in a fresh way. I mean, it's just...
I feel like you get a lot of extremes now. You get like the Marvel action.
I'm making it sound
movie.
like they were making these movies 50 years. Like you just don't get movies like this. Period.
Well, I mean, or you get like now you get also the like really serious. Like what's that movie we saw right before this movie? The
Joker.
No, the. God, I have the worst memory.
We did see Joker. What else did we see?
No, the one we saw with the
guy with the face.
The old.
He's a clown.
Ship movie, Island. The
Island movie?
Yeah. Not the Island, but the one with the castle.
Oh, with Tom Hanks. And he's got the ball. Wilson.
I hate all of you guys so much.
Wait, what movie are you talking about?
The Lighthouse movie.
Oh, the Lighthouse.
So you get like those like really serious indie movies where it's like everything is about the artistic point of view, or you get like the Marvel action movie to get like the comedy that's still serious and still poignant. I don't know.
This movie has it all.
Yeah,
it does.
It does. That's all. That was my point.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I remember. I think after Thor, I looked up. I went on IMDb, looked up. What else is Taika doing soon? And there was just. In production said Jojo Rabbit, and I clicked on it. I remember this, and there was no info on the movie, right? No picture, nothing. There was just a little synopsis on IMDb. it just said like World War II related movie coming from Taika Waititi. I'm like, ugh.
Not another one.
This is like a rite of passage. Every director has to do a World War II movie at some point. I'm like, well, whatever, I'll probably still watch it because it's Taika. And then, because you think it's just like another Saving Private Ryan or whatever. And then it's this. And you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
And we didn't mention, but Taika is a Jewish director.
That's right.
So.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Do you want to tease? So when are you releasing the Berlin Wall?
Watch out for November 9th.
So November 9th, in the honor of the fall of the Berlin Wall.
We're going to be coming out with a thing.
A thing.
That's right.
Da, da, da. I'm not saying what it is. Awesome.
right.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you soon.